Good morning. My name is Donna Marie Collins. I'm the hearing examiner that will be presiding over this morning's hearing. It's an application to rezone property to the Industrial Plan Development Zoning District. All testimony and evidence that I take during these hearings must be accepted under oath. So I'm going to administer the oath to everyone in the room that's going to be speaking on the record or submitting documents to me. If you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony and evidence you place into the record will be the truth? Okay, thank you. One question, do we have any members of the public here?
No, ma'am.
All right, so then I'm going to truncate my introduction and we can get started.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, my name is Richard Aiken. I'm an attorney with Henderson, Franklin, Starnes & Holt here in Fort Myers. I'm here this morning on behalf of the applicant in this matter, which is Tibbetts Lumber Company, on an industrial request for an industrial plan development in Lehigh Acres. I have the application is represented by DCI case number 2022-00011. I have a number of folks here with me today. I have on behalf of Tibbetts Lumber Company, Arlen Tillis, who is a director and the senior vice president with Tibbetts Lumber. I also have Mike Bowman, who is a regional manager with Tibbetts Lumber. Both of them are here today. We also have our project team. We have Sam Marshall, who's the project engineer with Banks Engineering. And I have Greg Stewart, who's with Stewart & Associates. He's the project planner. You will hear from both of them in our presentation. Ted Treach with TR Transportation is also here, and Mr. Treach has a brief presentation on traffic.
No environmental presenter?
No, if you have any questions, we can address those, but I don't have my environmental presenter here today. I don't think there should be any issues based upon the staff report and what we've been through, but I believe Sam can address those largely if they come up. So the request that's before you is to rezone 8.5 acres that consists of 6 lots from commercial plan development to industrial plan development in order to allow for an expansion of the Tibbetts Lumber Company Truss facility, which adjoins the proposed IPD to the south. So if you see just down here to the south is the existing Tibbetts Lumber Company IPD, which is a truss assembly plant, and then these are the requested IPD lots, which will be lots 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. The zoning on the property, as I mentioned, is currently CPD. It's Z97082. There is, as I mentioned, the lots in question were part of a platted subdivision that occurred back in 1997, and there were a number of lots. The existing IPD to the south was taken out of the CPD in 2014 and rezoned to IPD. So now this will be an expansion of that with these additional 6 lots. There is quite a bit of history. Sorry, I'm having trouble getting the clicker to work.
I can do it.
You just advance it for me one slide.
Oh, what did I just do? There we go. Maybe. One more?
One more, please. So there is some history that is actually, the staff report addresses it in quite a bit of detail and does a good job of going through the zoning history of these parcels.
Slow down.
All right, I'm sorry.
Addresses it in quite a bit of detail.
The staff report addresses the history, the zoning history on these parcels in quite good detail. It goes through it. I'm going to address a little bit of it right now. In 1997, 28.3 acres were rezoned to CPD, commercial plan development, from community commercial, C2, and light industrial. And that
Can
was
you show me where that was? So that's everything from Lee Boulevard south?
Correct. That's correct. Yeah. So if let me see if I can find it. I've got one slide.
I think that one above is probably one more. There. So the top of that is Lee.
That's correct. So, well, actually, no. So the top of where the requested IPD is not Lee. It's the next line of buildings right here. So there's a gas station on the very left hand, if I can show you. There's a gas station here, and then there's, I believe, a storage facility over here. There's an auto parts store and one other store that I can't recall what it is.
Right, so the north border is Lee, correct?
Correct, of the commercial plan development. Yes, ma'am, that is correct. But Lee Boulevard will not be on the north border of this requested IPD. The 1997 zoning commercial plan development, as I mentioned, was 28.3 acres. It approved a maximum of 200,000 square feet of commercial uses. It was an array of uses within that. There were some changes since 1997, mostly in an administrative format that changed the zoning. In 2004, there was a request for a lot reconfiguration, and there were some other changes that were approved in ADD 2004-00261. The amendment actually revised the master concept plan and changed the schedule of uses. It added a condition so that certain uses were only available on certain lots. So the entire schedule of uses after that administrative amendment didn't apply to all lots, they only applied to certain lots. Certain lots had certain approved uses. The schedule of uses was again revised in 2007 by another administrative amendment. That was done to add an allowable Goodwill store for development of a Goodwill store that never actually got built. In 2016, there was another administrative amendment that came through. That was ADD 2016-00215. That deleted the change from 2004 that limited the uses to certain lots within the plan development. So the current status of it is that the entire schedule of uses would be applicable to any lot within the commercial plan development. In 2014, as I mentioned, I'm having trouble getting it line up. Beth, could you help? I'm sorry. In 2014, that's when Tibbetts Lumber Company came in and got approval for their existing industrial plan development. As you can see here, it's directly to the south of the proposed IPD here. It consists of 3.79 acres, that's existing IPD to the south. It allows for up to 55,000 square feet of indoor and 15,000 square feet of outdoor manufacturing of wood and lumber products. This IPD will expand that use.
But this is its own standalone IPD, correct?
Yes, ma'am, it is. But it will essentially be an expansion of that Truss facility.
I was the hearing examiner on the other one.
Okay. So in front of you, you can see that we've got a copy of the existing master concept plan for the existing CPD and the schedule of uses. Many of the uses that are in the existing CPD are similar to the uses that we're requesting here. The uses, it's a broad array of commercial uses. Two of the uses that are somewhat similar would be building and material sales and contractors and builders, which allows all groups except concrete batch plants and asphalt. Could you help me? I'm sorry, I don't know why this.
Okay, I gotcha.
Perfect, thank you. So there are 12 existing commercial plan development and industrial plan development similar uses. There are 4 new uses being added to this industrial plan development, which includes entrance gates and the primary use, which is the lumber and wood manufacturing group for structural and wood, which is the use that would allow the Truss plant. As mentioned before, it's identical to the uses allowed on the southern IPD. It's very similar to many of the uses that would be allowed within the existing CPD. The building and material sales would allow in the land development code lumber and roofing material sales, and that's in the land development code at section 34-622. The contractors and builders group that's currently approved and allowed in the existing commercial plan development would allow fabrication work and outdoor storage of heavy equipment and other similar materials pursuant to section 34-622 of the land development.
Wait, I can't even hear you that fast.
I will slow down, I'm sorry. So the uses that we are asking to expand to are similar to many of the approved uses in the commercial plan development and are identical to the uses in the industrial plan development that exists.
I have a quick question regarding the sales. Is this wholesale sales or is this also a retail location?
I don't believe it's retail, so they're assembled on site and put on trucks and taken to the locations where they would be used at various. The trusses that are manufactured are residential, single-family, multifamily, as well as commercial trusses. So they would be taken to the site by trucks from the truss facility.
So the materials come in, they're assembled, and then the finished product, trusses or whatever, they leave on trucks.
Yes, ma'am.
So you got a lot of trucks coming in, trucks going out.
Yes, and I believe Mr. Stewart can speak to the number of trucks, as we talked about that as part of the presentation here. I don't think it's a lot of trucks, but it's certainly a certain
But we don't have cars coming in and out, like
Correct.
members of the public coming in and purchasing materials.
That is correct. The approved height, maximum building height in the commercial plan development is 35 feet. That's not going to change. The request is not to change that. In addition, the building maximum coverage that is in the approved commercial plan development is for 40%. That's not going to change as part of this request. So this slide shows the actual location, which is circled here in white of the proposed IPD. This is Lee Boulevard, right here just to the north, which does abut the property that is part of the commercial plan development. Westgate Boulevard abuts the property to the west, and 2 of the lots that are part of the proposed IPD will directly abut Westgate Boulevard. The property is close in proximity to both Colonial Boulevard and State Road 82. It's less than 2 miles from the intersection of State Road 82 and Colonial Boulevard here. It's also less than 4 miles from Interstate 75. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Stewart, who can go through some of the planning functions. And actually, before I do that, what I forgot to do earlier, I have a copy of the applicant's PowerPoint presentation and a full-size copy of the master concept plan.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. The PowerPoint is applicant exhibit 1. The enlarged master concept plan is applicant exhibit 2.
Okay,
Thank you, Richard.
Yes, thank you.
just try and get out for size right now. Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner, Beth, fellow members of the project team. My name is Greg Stewart. I'm a qualified expert in urban and regional land use planning, urban design, land development, and real estate finance. And my testimony has been accepted in numerous local governments, Federal Superior Court in Tacoma, King County Circuit Court in Seattle, Lee County Circuit Court, and other, quasi-judicial and judicial hearings. And I would like to present my resume as a matter of record and exhibit.
Okay, thank you. Applicant exhibit 3, Greg Stewart resume. Thank you.
Let's give it a shot here. To follow up on Mr. Aiken's locational narrative, as you can see on the air photo, Lee Boulevard is north of the subject lots that are seeking minor IPD rezoning. As will be discussed when I get into the actual surrounding zoning and neighborhood context, there are a number of commercial uses along Lee Boulevard, which will be north of the subject minor IPD, and as the air photo also shows, there are various light industrial and commercial uses that surround and abut the subject property. And then finally, Sam Marsh will be discussing the drainage pond in the southeast corner of the subdivision, which is identified, which is outside of the request, outside of the minor IPD request. Beth, maybe you can, yeah, for some reason it's just not.
It's not lining up.
Yeah, it's not going all the way. Well, the objective of Tibbetts minor IPD is really simple. They want to combine the subject 6 lots into a unified whole so as to support the existing Tibbetts Lumber Company operations. The zoning request, as Mr. Aiken said, is for lumber and wood manufacturing, specifically for wood products. I need to point out on the record, though, it is technically a manufacturing use. What this really is it's a functionally, from a functional perspective, it is an assembly use because most of the materials are coming on site pre-processed. So it's a matter of assembling rather than if you envision these giant sawmills and presses and jigs and so forth that are, cutting. So it's a clean operation. There's a minimal amount of noise. There's a minimal amount of impacts due to the nature of the assembly. And certainly from a planning perspective, the conversion from CPD with all the uses to the new IPD with a limited amount of uses, and within the context that this is not a commercial type product and project with people coming in and out, consumer related goods and services, business services. The project is less intense than what is currently permitted. It will result in lower trip generation. The building footprints will be smaller, so forth and so on. So it's a less intense use than what is currently being permitted. Then finally on the slide, the picture gives you an idea of what the process is all about in terms of assembling, in terms of storage, and of course the truss finished product. The Warehouse, the warehouse-oriented IPD is Exhibit F in your staff report. We are requesting 60,000 square feet. And again, Sam will testify to this, there are no revisions to the existing backbone drainage system, both conveyance, attenuation, retention. That pond to the southeast is not changed in any way, shape, manner, or form. The pond is permitted by the district. The subject lots are also permitted by the district, so there is backbone infrastructure in place for drainage. The project basically relies on the central urban land use of which it's located, and it's important to note that the property is also in the mixed-use overlay in that portion of Lehigh Acres. And then finally, I think Mr. Atkins pointed out, it is in Lehigh Acres, so it's subject to Goal 25 provisions, the Lehigh Planning Council and stuff like that. And again, reviewing your Exhibit F on this slide, you have two basic types of warehouses. The principal building is for the assembly and material handling equipment and the like. The actual product is being put together in the primary building, and the two secondary storage buildings are for storage, warehousing, and the like. The next component of this, the next component of the project and the site plan, and again, it's unfortunate that's a little bit on the lower, but there's a direct. It's designed to be directly aligned with Tibbetts to the south. There's a direct interconnect to facilitate the project. What you have are an internal circulation system that's designed and facilitated to handle large trucks. The main entrance, insofar as having the materials come in and go out of the property, the main entrance will be here, which is pushed about as far to the east from Westgate as possible. Again, the concept is to allow for stacking and more of a relaxed approach towards turning into the project from Timmers Lane. The slide also shows the three various open storage areas. So again, it's a pretty straightforward site plan. The project exceeds the open space requirement of 20%. The slide demonstrates an open space of 3.1%. Because it is in the mixed-use overlay, we are using the mixed-use overlay right-of-way buffer, which in this particular case is 5 trees per 100 linear feet. On deviations, we have withdrew the first two deviations, deviation 1 and deviation 2. The third deviation deals with aisle width for your access connection. We agree with staff's condition on that, and we appreciate staff approving deviation 3. Deviation 3 basically allows for easier internal egress and egress movements because of the aisle length, the larger turning radii, and the like. So that is the sole deviation of the minor IPD.
Okay, so the master concept plan that I'm relying on, what is the date of that master concept plan?
Sam, do you have the date?
This
on
has
that?
no date on it. This is undated. And I want to make sure that the master concept plan that I receive does not include deviations 1 and 2 markations on it. And I'll leave the record open if that's necessary.
For the record, Madam Hearing Examiner, you desire literally deviations 1 and 2 to just be erased from the MCP and just have deviations?
If they're withdrawn, they should not be reflected on the master concept plan. And the master concept plan needs to be dated because the resolution refers to a dated master concept plan.
Do we have a date, Sam?
I'll leave
That's not a date, that's the revision.
Leave the record open. He'll put it on the dated. Okay, you can wait your turn for when it's your turn, and we'll keep this together.
Okay, thank you. As I mentioned, the property is supported and the project is supported by its land use. It's a central urban land use. Adjoining the property, you'll see the future intensive development land use. The next slide shows the correlation of the subject minor IPD to the mixed-use overlay.
So this is basically a commercial industrial park area. This area south of Lee.
That is correct. The Westgate property was originally envisioned as, for better lack of a term, consumer and highway commercial oriented goods and services with business services. If you look at this slide, the zoning slide, the parcels, these 6 parcels that abut Lee Boulevard reflect that. You have gas convenience, car wash, an auto zone, one of my favorite, dollar store, one of my least favorite, public storage, food and beverage, those types of uses. It's my understanding that then after the highway commercial, there was no traction for anything else, but there was an immense demand for better lack of a term, light industrial uses, warehousing, processing, storage, the like. The property is surrounded by various business services and warehouses to the west, to the south, to the east. And then finally, the area that we're dealing with really has 4 types of zoning. You have an IPD, like Tibbetts, CPD, Westgate. You have the light industrial, or IL district, and then you have conventional commercial. So this is really the main economic hub of Lehigh Acres. This is the core commerce park that supports a lot of jobs in the greater Lehigh area. In terms of compatibility, again, because of the location and reliance on the central urban land use category, there are no compatibility issues because it's centrally located in this light industrial and commerce park. And also, for the record, we have approximate 778 feet distance from single family to the east and approximately 677 feet from residential on the north side of Lee Boulevard. So clearly the minor IPD is buffered by similar uses, which supports a finding of compatibility. In terms of Lee plan consistency, if you could refer to the applicant's Exhibit H, there's a detailed narrative that describes in depth how this is consistent with both the Lee plan and the Land Development Code. We do agree with staff's findings on Lee plan consistency. For example, the Central Urban Land Use Policy 113, it's in the urban core, so it's consistent. Wetland policies 151, there are no wetlands, there are no impacts, so it's consistent. Planning district allocations on policy 165, there's enough acreage allocated in this land use. In growth management, 211, policy 211 and 212, it's an appropriate location for this type of use. And 211 and 2.1 and 2.2.2, the development timing aspect, yes, it's completely and comprehensively serviced by needed public health, safety, and welfare type services and facilities, police, fire, EMS, water, et cetera, et cetera. When you look into the infrastructure, it's consistent with the infrastructure policies 411 and 412. It's located within the Florida Governmental Utility Service District. Protection of residential areas 515, I've already described how it's separated and contained within a commerce park. The industrial development standards, I would like to go through that since this is a minor IPD. First and foremost, it does comply with existing water, noise, and air standards. There is a water management district permit in place. Again, Sam Marshall will be talking about that, how it utilizes that district, how the design incorporates the standards and conditions. Again, not located near residential area. We're not proposing bulk storage or production other than the assembly of roofing products and doors and that type of thing. As I pointed out, it's consistent with the district. It's important to point out that there will be relative to zero air impacts because of the nature of the assembly. Environmental impacts have been mitigated. I'll get into that in a second. But the project has a Florida Wildlife Conservation permit for gopher tortoises. I'll explain that. There are no other environmental issues other than the gopher tortoises. Doesn't impact residential areas, as stated. It doesn't really impact water quality and quantity, because again, it's the nature of this assembly. It's not a heavy manufacturing unit that is water-based in terms of needing substantial amounts of water for either cooling or processing. It's not that whatsoever. Positive impact on employment. A previous slide showed going from roughly 39 employees to 80 employees for this project expansion. So, doubling plus your employees has an absolute positive economic impact on the area. Fire impacts, safety impacts, again, it's serviced by the appropriate authorities. Noise impacts and odor, again, nominal if not existent, because again, this is not a large-scale functional manufacturing activity. The buffering and screening, it's important to point out that the buffering is based on mixed use, and the buffering, I think, is consistent with the demand for buffering. This is an internal commerce park. You don't have residential through traffic. You don't have the traveling public. So these are like-kind uses, which helps facilitate the type D buffer that is called for in the mixed-use category, which is 5 trees per 100 linear feet. Impacting traffic and transportation, we have Ted Tresh to speak on that. I believe that's the last slide. And again, utility impacts, there are none because it is serviced. When you look at 712, it is in the core area. It's completely consistent with an appropriate location. It's a logical use for an appropriate location. And as I pointed out, though Ted will be discussing traffic, there are no residential through traffic issues to deal with, no conflicting large trucks to small Kias, for example. On the Land Development Code consistency, the Master Concept Plan complies. It shows internal street access. It shows circulation, configuration of buildings. So we comply with the standards on the LDC that creates the framework for what is an acceptable Master Concept Plan. We also show the location of service and storage areas, buffers, screening. We have proven intent to the rezoning by compliance with the LEED plan, and again, full documentation is in the applicant's Exhibit H in your staff report. Finally, on specifically the 33-1401 A and B, the Lehigh Acres Planning Council, we did a presentation and they gave us the 2 thumbs up, so we have an approval from the Lehigh Acres Planning Council. And to start to wrap things up, we have provided the documentation and facts necessary to prove entitlement, both with the LEED plan and the LDC. We've already discussed the environmental impacts in a cursory manner. I'll get into that in just a second. And then I also pointed out that, again, it's serviced by Central Water and Sewer. There's the FGUA letter, and then an actual diagram showing the size and location of the various pipes that provide for that type of utility. In terms of environmental compliance, the graphic in front of you was prepared by HALF. In June 2021, they did a by the book a protected species survey. The land is developed urban. It's specifically classified as 18211 by the Florida Flux Code. It's vacant, semi-improved, scattered herbaceous, some Brazilian pepper. There are no wetlands on site. The property was shown to contain numerous gopher tortoise burrows, along with many of them being active. The survey shows that it's solely the gopher tortoise that were occupying the habitat, and I use were because they have been relocated. The permit cited, although the screen's blocking it, but the permit has been issued, compensation has been received, and the gopher tortoises have been removed off-site. So we are in compliance with state and federal rules and regulation. So consequently, there are no existing rare and endangered or protected species, gopher frogs, indigo snakes, burrowing owls, any of those types of animals that use this type of high, dry, mesic, semi-altered land that's cleared, they're absent. Only the gopher tortoises, and they've been permitted and removed. And then I believe That is it for me. Do you have any questions, Madam
No, I
Harrison?
do not. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I would like to have Sam come up to speak to utilities, and then Sam after that would Ted speak on traffic and transportation. All right, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
Can you go to slide, I think it's page 9? Probably the best one to look at existing drainage. Thank you.
I think I can do it.
It's just the aerial.
I think we're up and running on your end, Sam.
Oh, okay. That's it. Just stop right, I don't need to push any buttons. We're good. We're going to stay on one slide. Good morning. My name is Sam Marshall. I'm a Florida registered professional engineer with Banks Engineering. I'm here today on behalf of the applicant. I have previously been accepted as an expert in the field of civil engineering here in this venue, and I would like to be would request to be accepted as a professional civil engineer expert this morning as well.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. I'm going to focus my conversation on drainage, but we can discuss any civil engineering matters that, if any questions come up. So I'll try and speak from the script in brief. Westgate subdivision is a developed subdivision with roads, drainage pipes, berms, an existing lake, an existing discharge structure. It's been built, it was designed, permitted, completed, and certified in compliance with the South Florida permit that it received. It's South Florida Permit 36-05236-P. The specific lands in this zoning action requested have already been cleared with the initial subdivision construction. They were already filled as well. And this action doesn't change any or propose any changes to the drainage system. It's going to remain as it is today. The areas that are developed, the other neighbors are going to continue to enjoy the drainage function of the roads, the pipes, the lake. The function will not change regardless if it's a CPD or IPD. It's going to be the same function. Runoff from the lots generally drains all to the lake in the southeast corner. From that lake, there is a, I'm going to point, if that's okay. I'm better at pointing in. So I'm going to walk over the area. So generally everything in the subdivision drains to the roads. There's a pipe that works that gets all the drainage to the lake. And then from the lake, there's an outfall pipe and an outfall structure that drains along the south edge of the property to a ditch along the eastern edge of Westgate Boulevard. So that's the outfall, that's the eastern edge of Westgate Boulevard. That's going to remain existing. There's nothing that's going to change with it. We're going to comply with it. The new lots that are coming in are going to be required to provide dry detention. That's the addition to this system. They're going to provide dry detention systems for pretreatment on each lot or group of lots, and as the other lots had to do as well. Those dry detention areas, similar to the other lots, the maintenance of those is going to be required by the lot owner. So each lot owner is required to maintain the drainage facilities on their lot, which in this case is going to be the dry detention facilities and any pipes or anything, any other conveyances that are on their site. The common drainage elements, such as the lake, the outfall pipe, the curb and gutter roadways, any pipes in the rights of way, are maintained by the Westgate Property Owners Association, which these lots are a member of that association as well. The entire development is in an X zone for FEMA, so it's not subject to any seasonal flooding. So all of the floor elevations have been based on the South Florida 100-year, 3-day zero discharge storm. That's true for the buildings that are in there today, and it's true for the proposed structures that are going to be built on this new site. That's the drainage summary. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer the questions.
No, thank you.
general
I
issues.
appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, the plan, let me go back and address the date on the master concept plan. We can, the last change to the master concept plan to confirm it was made after, I think, Beth, after you and I spoke, and we had deleted the references to the deviations that were removed. However, we had changed the number to number 1 deviation for deviation 3, which remains. Beth alerted us. We went back and made that deviation number 3 for continuity with the record, so that all through the documents it still shows as deviation number 3. There's no reference to 1 and 2 deviations on the master concept plan. We'd be happy to go ahead and provide the revision date. Just didn't plot on this version, so we'd be happy to plot a revision date on it.
Yes, I need a revision date for the purposes of the resolution.
happy to do it. So we will submit that under separate cover. Happy to do it.
Okay, I'm going to ask for that by Friday. If you can accommodate that, I can
Yes.
work on this case fairly quickly, so the sooner I have a complete record, the sooner I can release that recommendation.
Not a problem at all. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Ted, there's the last.
Good morning, Ted Shreesh, TR Transportation Consultants. We did the analysis for this proposed IPD rezoning. It is a decrease in intensity from the CPD that's currently approved, so it is a less intense traffic with the industrial zoning. So the access to the external roads isn't changing. We have access to Westgate Boulevard to our west via Timmers Lane, and then you can see Dallas Street to the north connects to Lee Boulevard, and then a little further east, Timmers Lane, it curves and hits 8th Street, which just off the aerial connects up to Lee Boulevard again. So there's another connection to Lee Boulevard a little bit off the aerial that's on the screen, a little further to the east. So those accesses are remaining to this property. The level service analysis shows that Lee Boulevard will continue to operate at a sufficient level of service with the IPD zoning, as well as Westgate Boulevard. So again, we'll look at turn lane improvements as we proceed to the development order stage with the project, but this project meets the requirements of the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan in terms of the requirements for the rezoning application. I'd be more than happy
Just
to
so
answer
that
your
I
question.
understand
Yes.
what you just said, that the uses permitted under the current zoning of CPD actually generates more trips
Yes.
than the proposed uses under the requested IPD.
Yes.
So this represents a reduction in overall external trips on the county road work.
Yes. And again, this use, as you can see, the existing facility to the south is going to be basically a continuation of that on these properties. So this is a manufacturing facility. So as you indicated, as previously comments, this isn't open to the public. This is going to be trusses that are manufactured for homes and buildings in the area. So the trucks will deliver the lumber material to the site, and there are folks here that can explain this better than I, but the trusses then are manufactured from that lumber, and then they're loaded on the trucks to be hauled out to the sites for the construction. So the majority of the traffic really is the employee traffic that arrives in the morning and then leaves in the afternoon. So the truck traffic is very light throughout the day as those trucks enter and leave the site, making those deliveries to the various construction sites throughout the area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, again, Richard Aiken. I just wanted to add one other thing regarding Lee Plan consistency, and that is policy 7.1.8 of the comprehensive plan requires that all county actions related to industrial land uses be consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the economic element of the Lee Plan. Tibbetts Lumber Company has been operating in Lee County for 12 years, so this would be an expansion, as you've heard, of their existing operations. They have locations throughout Florida. The Truss plant currently employs about 39 people. With this expansion, there will be an increase of approximately doubling the number of employees to approximately 80 people. There will be a wider array of wage ranges between those employees on site that will be based upon some skilled and some less skilled laborers. In addition, the existing plant produces about 9 sets of trusses that go out per day. With the expansion, the plant is anticipated to produce approximately 24 sets of trusses per day, which will also have a corresponding increase with the amount of revenue generated by the plant and the amount that it will be paid to employees. As I mentioned, I think before, the trusses are for single and multifamily residential as well as for commercial buildings, so that will have a positive impact on the economy, we believe, as far as building materials that are required for numerous things. I did also want to point out, with regard to the economic element, currently it's codified in 158, starting with Goal 158. There is a pending plan amendment that has been transmitted to the state of Florida to change the economic element. And so I will briefly discuss what the current economic element says, and then but the changes are really not substantive with regard to these things, but I don't know how you would like to evaluate that with regard to the fact that by the time we get to the board, that may have changed. So objective 158.4 of the economic element provides that Lee County, in coordination with the Horizon Council and other appropriate entities, will maintain programs which are designed to encourage the retention and expansion of the county's existing economic base. And policy 158.4.1 below that provides that Lee County, in coordination with the Horizon Council and other appropriate entities, will continue programs which assist existing companies in expansion efforts and new companies that desire to relocate to the county. The changes will be new goal 159 of the Lee plan is how it would be codified now, and that goal would provide support the retention and expansion of existing businesses and the attraction of new domestic and foreign businesses. And the corresponding objective will not change much. It will say, it'll be 159.2, and it will provide establish and maintain programs designed to encourage the retention and expansion of the county's existing economic base. With that, we believe that the evidence will support consistency with the economic element, given the positive impacts to the community and to Lee County as a result of the evidence that you've heard here today. The final thing I'd like to address is that we did provide a 48-hour letter, 48-hour notice in this case that identified one single issue with regard to the staff report. That was with regard to attachment G to the staff report, which is the conditions and site development regulations. The staff report and the condition was for a 25-foot minimum building setback, street setback. The applicant proposed in the 48-hour letter a 20-foot primary building setback instead of, so basically changed from 25 down to 20. 20 was what we had provided in the application. I've spoken with Ms. Workman, and I believe that staff and the applicant are now in agreement that 20 feet would be acceptable. And I'll let her answer any questions about that if we need to.
And this is from the street?
Yes, that is correct. And it's actually, I believe the 20 feet is an increase in 5 feet from the existing setback required under the current CPD.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything further for now?
That concludes the applicant's presentation, unless you have any further questions of us.
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll resume with staff's presentation.
Richard, that last little bit that you did about the change in, is that something that's in the PowerPoint, or were you reading from something else?
It's not. I have my notes here. Would you like to see them?
Well,
I can give them to you if you want.
yeah, just to make sure that there were a couple of things I wasn't sure if I understood what you said, and since it's terminal, let me just take a picture with my phone and then, if that's, is it the whole thing that you,
It's
just that part? Hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. Find my phone in this mess. Thank you. Because she's going to want this right away. Where am I? Well, I can. Magnify. Here we go. Thank you. I don't have to bother you if I couldn't understand.
Well, you would think permanent would be like a contract, but if the rules change, you're looking at it like it's new. We'll have that MCP here today. That'll be delivered right before lunch. So it's being changed a lot now. So,
Literally take out 1 and 2 off.
we did. We took 1 and 2 out. Beth wanted it, and I think Beth's correct. She wanted it to say 3 because if you look at all the record,
Yeah.
the record says we talk about 3 is this, 3 is this, 3 is this. So we left it as 3.
That's what we always have done.
And I think what Don Marie was saying was if we don't have to take them out, that's the one. So 1 and 2 are not there anymore. So I think they're both saying the same thing. And if they need something different, we'll do it differently. But we've got it shown as 3. As 3. Yeah. 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 So.
So, and I think their language covers it, but the deviation covers all access extension between the parking lot or from the lodging perspective. one lot. Great deal.
Not from the.
It was the same project that.
Well, see, that's just it.
You showed up for that hearing, that's the council, was two of you were at.
Oh, yeah.
History of the tax all stays.
No, it wasn't that one, this was
And what I have in mine
another, it was in the
has
back
the
one.
three there.
Okay.
And I think it's still.
About the same number of people.
In my staff report.
How can businesses make money on, if their base is so large? Unless you guys
All the
are
red
cash.
shirts.
I can't imagine financing and, on that level.
Yeah, she just wants a date to make sure there's a date on there, because she's gonna cite the date in a condition of
Yeah,
the
and I'll
approval.
put that in the revision block. I think I know the dates we talked.
Yeah, I have them, I have it in the system, like the date you submitted, but you could
It's
put.
the date after we talked. Any
Yeah.
date between that and before the 48-hour
Yeah.
number.
Yeah,
is
right,
the date.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
thank you.
And Sam, did you read from something besides the PowerPoint when you were up here?
I did, loosely, I use that as a guideline.
Well, just in case there's a
Yes.
spelling or something, may I just
You
take
may,
a
you
minute?
can have.
I can have
You
it?
can have it if you don't mind my scribbling.
I
my notes
don't,
in
I
it.
don't
You may
mind at all.
absolutely
That
have it.
way I can
Yes.
refer to it if I didn't understand.
Absolutely.
You were a little slower than Richard, so I think
I
I
tried.
got it.
I could talk fast, but I heard the warning. So,
I'm gonna go really fast. Faster than Richard.
Oh, I don't think you can.
It's just gonna be blurb.
I don't think you can go.
I admire that. How fast he can go.
Well, you know.
I think I have. My copy is over here.
hey, Eric.
Finishing my smoothie.
Adding the,
It looks gross, but it's delicious.
Little green smoothie. Have blueberries in it?
It has blueberries, it has spinach, it has peaches and melon and strawberries,
Nice.
almond milk, yogurt, and protein powder.
That's what mine has. Usually that's all the ingredients.
Yeah?
I sometimes throw the chia seeds when I make a smoothie, when I have time to make a smoothie, but yeah.
I stopped putting the chia seeds in, but I used to because I have diverticulosis.
Oh,
I have
yeah.
a precursor, so, I still do the berries, even though I really am not, but I figured the chia seeds were pushing it.
Right.
But they're delicious. I mean, it's the vanilla protein powder, and it's.
Yeah,
I make them for my husband and I in my little ninja thing.
yeah. That's nice.
So-
That ninja thing is nice because it has the cup. You just zip it and go.
Yeah, you can. You can actually make it in here, but I use the big pitcher because I make like 3 of these. This is not 3 of them. But you know what the Pampered Chef have? If I hadn't have just gotten that Ninja for Christmas, Pampered Chef had a blender that actually warmed stuff up. You can make soups, you can blend everything, and then it warms it up right in. I was like, I want that so bad, but my husband just bought me this Ninja. That would be noticed.
Basically quality.
It was very expensive too.
The Pampered Chef thing.
That blender thing. Yeah, this probably was too.
You just gotta get a bunch of people to come to your party so that you can get closer.
I got like $600 worth of free stuff, which I didn't even think of. We had like a quarter auction at the clubhouse where I live, and there was a Pampered Chef lady. I love Pampered Chef. I said, why don't you come over to my house? I'll get some bunch of girls together. It'll it's an excuse for a party. I didn't even think about and she said, okay, you have this much to spend.
Wow.
I'm ready to resume.
For the record, Beth Workman, I'm a principal planner in the zoning section. Before you today is DCI 2022-00011, Tibbetts Lumber Company. I do have my PowerPoint presentation as an exhibit.
Was that on and
I turned it on.
off? Okay.
Okay.
This is Staff Exhibit 2, the staff report is Staff Exhibit 1.
So the applicant did a pretty good job explaining where this is. It gets kind of confusing because we are in a CPD. This whole entire thing is in a commercial plan development. And I'm going to go over that a little bit on the next slide. But this is a rezone of an 8.5 acre commercial plan development to industrial plan development to permit a maximum of 60,000 square feet of warehouse manufacturing and assembly, open storage, and accessory uses. Staff has recommended approval with conditions.
So I was curious, why didn't they just amend the existing IPD to incorporate this property?
I will let the applicant respond to that. So on this slide goes through the history. The applicant went over the history a little bit. The reference here, the dashed white line, represents the entire commercial plan development. And that was rezoned in '97 for 200,000 square feet of commercial uses. The orange line at the southernmost point of the CPD is the rezoning to the industrial plan development, which you just asked about, doing an amendment to add these lots, the current lots, into the orange. So the yellow would go into the orange. So the yellow represents our case before you, and then the red outlines what is left of the CPD. So staff is currently reviewing an administrative amendment to the overall CPD to remove the yellow portion and the orange portion, and what will be left is the red portion. And that is ADD 2023-00002. That is under review. It's still insufficient, and it will not be signed until the recommendation goes through on the subject case before you.
And that'll remove the IPD lands from the CPD.
Correct, correct. Because right now, the two orange pieces, the two IPDs in the bottom of your screen, those have overlapping uses. They have the commercial plan development use, and they also have the IPD use because they were never removed from the overall CPD. And that's what the ADD is doing as well, removing the IPD portion in the orange to set the record straight. So the surrounding uses, Mr. Stewart went through that. I just want to touch a little bit on the lay of the land. We do have central urban is kind of like this brown color here. And then this over here is the industrial development future land use category. So what you have is our overall CPD. To the north of the overall CPD is Lee Boulevard. To the west is Westgate. And then you get into commercial uses that are hugging Lee Boulevard, and as you work south, it becomes more industrial. So this is an industrial park over here. This is our subject parcels, and here's our two IPD, and then Tibbetts also owns this piece down here, so that's all this campus they're forming here. And then over on the other side, on to the east, is commercial with some industrial, like I said, as you move to the south. Across the street from Lee Boulevard is residential. Going through the future land use category, it's central urban, and per 1.1.3, it is the urban core. Mr. Stewart went over this thoroughly, went through the use that's actually going to occur on these parcels to make it clear that it is light industrial. So raw wood is not coming in here. It's not being cut, sawed. Everything comes in prefabbed and then put together on site in the facility. So that complies with the central urban to allow the light industrial. Again, Mr. Stewart went through this. There are urban services. It is developed directed to future urban areas where adequate public facilities. They are providing the required buffers. I'm going to go over the buffering a little bit more in depth because it is in the mixed use overlay. There is a lesser buffer when a use abuts a right of way. It goes to 5 feet, but also the use, bless you, the use on the site is open storage. So in LDC 34-3005 B1, there is an additive on there for screening, which also complies with the light industrial component to screen the uses. And so I want to go over that a little bit. They are providing the screening.
So that mixed-use overlay does not override the need to screen open storage.
Correct. There are uses listed in 10-424 of the Land Development Code that you must follow those uses and buffering when you're in the mixed use overlay. They override the mixed use overlay. And in this case, it would be the screening, the opaque fence or wall around the development. So there is public transit. It's in the central urban future land use category. Like I said, there's adequate facilities. There's pedestrian and automobile connections. The applicant is proposing to connect, there's the 2 IPDs. All of this will be connected so it flows. And then there's the pieces that are being rezoned right now. And this is the mixed use overlay outline. So you can kind of see that the mixed use overlay runs along Lee Boulevard on both sides and then kind of extends down this way. These sections are not in the mixed use overlay. The applicant did hold a public information meeting per policy 17.3.5. And as Mr. Marshall went through, there is pretreatment proposed on site for the dry detention on site, and he explained how the surface water management system will work to support the overall infrastructure, because as he mentioned, this does have a South Florida Water Management District permit that encompasses the entire CPD, including the IPD portions, and all of them share in a property ownership association that shares that detention area that's in the southeastern corner of the planned development. So the master concept plan does include the open space. It lists the different uses for the parking and the assembly area and the storage area, some more storage, and then other storage to increase, like they had spoken about the economic element, to increase to more development on the site for delivery. Schedule of
Half
use.
the site is going to have to be screened then, it looks like. Because you have
Correct.
pretty large areas of open space.
So on the master concept plan, there is a note, and you kind of can't see it here, but there's a fence that runs around this entire, and then this entirety. And then there's a 5-foot buffer against Timmers, and then Livingston, and then around Livingston on this side, and then nothing over here because the mixed use overlay doesn't require that, but there will be the opaque fence, no planting. And then the parking over here will just meet the mixed use overlay. Schedule of uses, they match what it would be in light industrial conventional zoning district of IL. Kind of went over what the exact uses on the site will be. There won't be any sawing, dust, it's all prefab built on site and then shipped out. Stole this from their website. Environmental sciences. So when staff was doing the research on the parcels, there was a vegetation removal permit that has been issued in 2022. That vegetation removal permit, Veg 2022-00508, was issued in August of 2022, associated with the development order 2004-00207 for the excavation of tortoises. So the tortoises, there are, I believe, 84 burrows on the parcels. They have been relocated per their Fish and Wildlife permit. However, the concern is that the site is not developed. the site hasn't been impacted. Yeah, the tortoises have been moved off, so staff provided a condition to the zoning, the current zoning, that prior to the DO approval, that the applicant needs to submit an updated species survey, because the species survey is pretty old on this thing, and we need to make sure that everybody's accounted for, and then prior to any site work, a new veg permit is issued for the relocation. I have tremendous history on this site. I reviewed development orders for 10 years. This is one of them I did the CPD on, so I reviewed all of these, and we relocated tortoises when we were allowed to do that into this facility, or into this area.
They're probably going to move to those nice wide open spaces.
Yes, and so my concern is, even when we were moving them in here, they were escaping. So we always had to go out, even through the hay bales and everything, that we barricaded this. So that is why we have conditions on here. Staff put conditions to ensure that the tortoises were protected, and if anything needed to be moved off, they were taken care of prior to any site work.
All right, so, and this may be a continuous thing, though, because I'm imagining this is going to expand in phases. So not next phase immediately going to do everything at once. I'm thinking, right? So there could be,
Yes, there could be
span of
phases.
years.
So this is a condition prior to the issuance of a development order. So it's to a development order, not first development order, not recognizing, you do the first one and done. So species surveys are good for 5 years. So if the site gets developed in increments over a 5-year period, the species survey will still be good. The veg permit for each phase would come in. Staff would go out and do a field inspection, make sure that everybody was accounted for, everybody was moved off site to issue that next phase of a permit.
So there is a check and balance in place.
Correct, through the condition of prior to any site work. So if the development order on this comes in to develop the parking and then 1 or 2 of these and then not do this, it would be recognized in that DO because it's prior to DO. So as each DO comes through, you would have the future phases they would come in for. So we kind of went over the buffering on the site. It's a 5-foot wide buffer with a 6-foot high opaque fence or wall. That encompasses the LDC sections 10-425 and 34-3005. The applicant is providing the required buffering. The areas abutting commercial or industrial uses, there's no buffer required, and LDC 34-3005 would need to be provided on the open storage areas. Like the applicant has stated, it's 20% open space in the mixed-use overlay. They are providing roughly 36% open space, and there's no indigenous on the site. Mr. Treesh went over the traffic impacts, the site, the level of service. It is a lesser impact than what was previously looked at for analysis for the commercial plan development. So turn lane improvements will be evaluated at time of development order. And the urban services are present on the site. It is in central urban, so Florida government utilities is the potable water and sanitary sewer, the adequate access to roadway infrastructure, Lehigh Acres Fire Control, EMS, the Sheriff's Office are all within 3 to 5 miles. There is a bike and pedestrian facility north and south sides of Lee Boulevard, and it is on Lee Tran Route 110. So adequate services are being provided. As mentioned, deviations 1 and 2 have been withdrawn as they do not apply. This is in the mixed use overlay, so 10-416D does not apply here. And then with that lesser buffer for the mixed use overlay, it allowed room for the 6-foot high visual screen to go in. The third deviation was to allow a 40-foot wide width for the parking lot entrances to accommodate the truck ingress and egress. The code states that it's a maximum width of 35 feet, so a deviation was necessary. Staff did agree with that deviation. And staff is an approval for deviation 3 and the applicant's 48-hour letter for that decrease in that setback from the right-of-way. Again, this just shows where the deviations were going to be applied, and Mr. Marshall is going to submit a new master concept plan depicting those. So with the findings and conclusions, staff finds that the applicant has provided sufficient evidence for approval of this plan development through the documents provided, and so staff recommends approval with the conditions.
Okay, can we go back to the open space page?
Of course. This one?
Yes. So explain to me what is going to count as open space, because we're having reduced roadside buffers, and I know the water retention areas can apply to a certain extent. Where is the open space coming from?
The open space is coming from, okay, let me get to the master concept plan. So you have the buffers in here, there's an easement that runs in here as well. So they, in 10-421 installation, you have to provide half of your required buffer outside of all easements. There's a buffer that, or an easement that runs around this parcel that adds increased area. You have to at least provide half the required buffer outside of all easements, and no buffer must be less than 5 feet. So if you have a 10-foot wide easement that's running around here, you can't put 2.5 in and 2.5 out because you have to at least provide 5. So that increases that buffer. The easement stands alone. The buffer is 5 feet outside of the easement. So there's an increase, and you get your 20% added there. You also have the parking islands that are running in here. Industrial doesn't require any building perimeter around their fence line. You will have the detentions being counted, and that's 25% of the required open space can be counted as open space from the surface water management system. So they're meeting it through the amount of detentions that they're providing, the increased buffering with the easements running around each one of these, and then you have the detention areas. There is an open space exhibit that was submitted that I did not include in this, but could be submitted for your reference.
Yes. How about we do that?
Can do that.
Include that in the request for Friday.
Of course, I can do that.
It's in the record, that's it.
And so that can be turned in, so that would kind of show you where the open space is being claimed. Nothing is being claimed in these areas, as they're going to be
Pavement.
it's, yeah, gravel, yeah, and so is this, and then this will be paved.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
That concludes.
If I may, Madam Hearing Examiner, so page 14 of the applicant's PowerPoint slide, the graphic that's on page 14 is the open space exhibit. If you would like us to provide just a clean copy, full page of the open space exhibit, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I'm going to include that in the request for Friday. I see.
We'll be happy to provide that as well, is the updated master concept plan.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Would you like to make any concluding remarks?
No, ma'am, I think we've covered it all. Thank you.
Okay, I'm a little bit familiar with this property. I was the hearing examiner over the prior IPD zoning. I have not been to the area since then. I hope to do a site visit either tomorrow or early next week. I don't anticipate it will take me very long to issue a recommendation in this case. So if you can get me those additional documents by Friday, there's a chance I can release this by next Friday.
That should be no problem. I believe that the master concept plan, I was talking to Mr. Marshall, we can have that to you today. I think we can get the other exhibit to you today. as
Right,
well.
don't feel like you have to wait till Friday, but you have until Friday.
I'm emailing it to you right now. Okay. The exhibit, the open space.
So Mr. Stewart's emailing me the open space exhibit so I can print it off and bring it to you today.
Okay, and when I come down here, all those roads are free access. I can just drive all around in there. Nobody's gonna shoot me if I enter into your parking lot or anything like that.
If you deny us,
I've been chased before. I've been chased before. Mobile home parks are my biggest issue somehow, but okay. Well, thank you very much, and that concludes the hearing.
Richard, let me find that, and I'm going to send it to you right now, and you have it.